This video is designed to train Milwaukee Voter Project volunteers in the use of MyVote to assist residents of Wisconsin with online voter registration. Since the Milwaukee Voter Project primarily registers voters at locations where individuals have a driver's license or state ID, I will focus on using those two forms of identification as proof of residency throughout most of this video. I have included a brief section at the end of the video if you wish to learn about what other items can be used as proof of residency when registering Wisconsin voters. This slide shows the forms of photo ID that are accepted at the polls when you go to vote in Wisconsin. I'm going to focus on the items I've highlighted in the blue rectangles, since that is what we will use when registering voters at our locations. I've included the statement on the right-hand side of the slide for those who might be using other forms of residency when using MyVote. We will discuss that more at the end of this video. The great thing about using a driver's license or state ID is that the state has all the information necessary to fully complete a voter registration. I would like to point out the items in the blue rectangle in the upper right-hand corner of this photo. These are the paper receipts for a state driver's license or state ID that will be issued by the DMV. This receipt is a valid proof of residency and voter ID. I will have a more detailed image of these items on the next slide. As you can see, the photo on the right is a sample of a Wisconsin driver's license. State ID cards will look very similar, but will have state ID in the upper left-hand corner instead of driver's license. All of the information you will need for registering a voter will be found on the license or the state ID. The image on the left is a sample of what a receipt for a license or ID will look like. When someone applies for a new license or ID in Wisconsin, they will receive this receipt, which they can use as an ID until their actual card arrives. As you can see, there's an image of what the card will look like once it is printed. Since the photo is an exact image of the card they will receive, all of the information you will need to register voters is on this receipt. When registering voters using the receipt, I like to make them aware that the receipt can be used as a photo ID for voting for up to 45 days or until they receive their license or ID. Okay, now let's get started with the registration process. We use MyVote to register all voters. If you go to the website that you see listed in blue on the right-hand side of the slide, you will see the screen on the left side of this slide pop up on your device. As you can see, there are a wide range of functions related to voting that you can access on this site. We are going to focus on registering voters in this video. Videos on how to use the other functions can be found on our website at MilwaukeeVoterProject.com. If you approach someone who is not sure if they are registered to vote, I recommend that you tell them you would be happy to check if they are registered and will take less than 1 minute. In this case, click on the name button in the upper right-hand corner, just under the blue Military and Overseas Voter button. If the person knows they are not registered, you can click on the Register to Vote tab immediately under the name button, or click on the Register to Vote icon in the lower left corner of this screen. Before we go on, I should probably point out that you can go to MyVote on your phone, one of our tablets, or one of our computers. Any one of them works fine for registering someone to vote. You can even ask the person if they'd like to fill out the registration on their phone. Whatever is most convenient for you or you're most comfortable with, feel free to do so. I tend to use our computers when I have Wi-Fi available because I like the keyboard to type information in. I find it to be much easier than a tablet keyboard and definitely a smaller phone keyboard. So you decide what works best for you and go with it. Okay, so the first step in registering someone to vote is inputting the person's name and birth date, as you can see here on the slide above. I have taken the name and the birth date from the sample driver's license I showed you on the previous page. I have typed those into the boxes that I have highlighted with red rectangles. That's usually in gray. I have highlighted the red boxes on each of my slides to show you what are the mandatory items that need to be filled in each slide. You will see some blue and green boxes later in the presentation, which I will explain when we get there. When you hit the search button on the previous screen, this screen will appear with the information in the blue rectangular boxes already completed from you entering it on the previous screen. I use blue rectangles throughout this presentation to signify the places where information transfers from a previous screen. If the person is not registered, you get the message at the top that says MyVote cannot find the record for that person. Click on the red box that I have circled which says Register to Vote. This will take you to the next screen. If the person is registered to vote, you will get a message that says they are registered. MyVote will usually provide the residence on file for that voter. If that residence is not where the voter now lives, or is different from that on the license or state ID being used, you should get a message that says Change Address. Click on the Change Address button and you can change the address on the upcoming screens. This next screen is to inform voters about the 2 ways they can register to vote. Since they have agreed to register online, I summarize this slide for them by telling them that it says we need a driver's license or state ID that accurately lists their current address. If they inform you that the address is correct, click on the Go to Step 2 button at the bottom of the page. If the address on the license is not the current address, you and the voter will need to go to the DMV website and change their address. Then you can complete this voter registration. The easiest way to do this is by clicking on the link embedded in the middle of this page, which I have highlighted in red. The voter can use this license or ID with the old address as a photo ID when voting, but they will need to present one of the proof of residency items when they go to vote to prove they now reside at the address for which they are registered to vote. I have a list of the proof of residency items that can be used in Wisconsin on one of the slides at the end of this video. This screen also points out that voters may not register using MyVote within 20 days of an election. This is not a problem for us since we stop all registrations before that 20-day window. This page is one of the most important as you go through the registration process. If I am filling out the form for the person, I carefully read out every statement on this page and make sure they understand what is being asked. You can see that we are asking if they are a U.S. citizen, if they are 18 years old at the time of the next election, if they have a current Wisconsin driver's license or state ID, if they are going to be a resident at the current residence for 28 days, and if they are currently serving a sentence for a felony conviction. That includes parole, probation, or extended supervision. I like to have the person tap the yes or no button for each response. If the person says they are a felon, be sure to ask them if they are still on paper. In Wisconsin, that means they are still serving some part of the sentence which will prevent them from voting. If they say, no, I'm off paper, then they are allowed to vote in the state, so they can click no, and you can continue with the registration process. The last question is, are you otherwise disqualified from voting? That is almost always a no, unless someone has been adjudicated as being unable to cast a ballot. I've never run into anyone who's answered yes to this question in the hundreds of registrations I've done so far. As you answer some of the questions on this form, there will be some pop-up boxes, and I will explain those on the next slide in this video. This screen shows the pop-up boxes I just talked about. You'll notice that the blue box where it says, are they 18 years of age, will be already filled in with the birth date. This is the birth date that you see on the license there, the sample license. Then when it says, do they have a current driver's license or state ID, those red boxes will appear. Once again, they'll be gray. I just wanted to highlight them in red. You need to fill that out with the information provided on the state ID or the driver's license. That has to be filled out, as you can see. Now, I have that little green box there to the side that says my Wisconsin ID card does not have an expiration date. If someone has a Wisconsin state ID and that person is over 65 years old, there is no expiration date. So you will not fill out that expiration date box, you'll just click this green box. So the green box is very rare. It only happens for someone with just a state ID and if the person is over 65. Other than that, all of these items are checked off and you can click on Continue to Step 3. Step 3 is Update My Name. On this page, you'll either need to type in the person's middle name or check the box that says I do not have a middle name. There's also some information below that talks about if they had a prior name, if it's someone who's been divorced and is returning to their old name, or maybe they're getting married, you'll need to click that off and then fill out the information that will pop up there. Unfortunately, I don't have any examples I've done recently that can show you those pop-up boxes, but it's similar to what we've seen so far. This is what the bottom of that page looks like. You can see where it has the prior name, and you can see that there are a couple other boxes, point those out to you. It says, as a member of the military, you do not need to register to vote. So if someone's in the military, they can click on that and then proceed. Or there's a box at the bottom that says, I live permanently overseas with no intent to return to the United States. I'd read those to them, and they say, no, that doesn't describe me. I'm like, thank you, and I click on the box at the bottom that says, continue to step 4. Step 4 is where you input the voter's address as it is found on the ID or driver's license. The red rectangular boxes must be completed. The green ones depend on the voter's situation. For example, if they live in an apartment, you must fill out the apartment type and the apartment number in those first 2 green boxes. If they have a prior address where they used to vote, then you would click on that box and fill out that address. The mailing address box, you will click on that, and some pop-up boxes will occur if the person has a mailing address that is different from the one above. So make sure you read through those. The next 2 boxes, the email address and phone number, as it says, they are optional. So I just usually let the person know these are optional. If you would like for a city clerk or someone in the state to be able to contact you about your voter registration or voting information, I can put that in there if you would like. A lot of them will give you one or the other. Some will say, no, don't bother. It's up to that person if they want to fill that out. Then at the bottom, I let them know, I ask them if they are interested in being a poll worker. If they say yes, I click that box. Sometimes they'll ask me about being a poll worker. And I'll tell them, well, there's always a shortage of poll workers, and you do earn money for doing so. So it's up to you. If you're interested, I can click that, and you might get a call from your local clerk. And the last thing I will ask them is, do you feel you need accommodations at the polling place? Usually it's pretty obvious if they will or not because of the fact that they may have a significant physical disability, but sometimes it's just good to ask just to be on the safe side. So make sure you read through that question. After you have all that filled out, click on Continue to Step 5. So as you can see, Step 5 is Review and Certify My Registration. At this point, I turn the computer screen around to them if I'm using it on a computer, or I hand them the tablet and I say, please look through every question and make sure that everything on this page is correct and is what you told me. Everything that I have listed here in blue will already be filled out, and as you can see, it has all the things, including contact information. I don't have an email or phone number on here. If they provided that to me on the previous page, then that would be in there as well. This person said they did not want to be a poll worker, so that says no. And I didn't have anything about accommodation, so I left that blank. At that point, I tell them, would you please, if everything's correct, click on that red box at the bottom that says, I certify the above information is true and correct. I think it's good practice to have the person who's registering to vote double check that the information they gave you that is on the form is all correct. That way there's no doubt that you both agree that it is truthful to the best of your knowledge. After that is done, I also have the person click on the button at the bottom that says Continue to Step 6. The reason why I like to do that, you will see on the next screen. And here's the reason why I like to have them hit that button moving to this slide is because they can now see that they have registered themselves to be a voter in Wisconsin. If they want to have a physical verification, they can type in an email address in that bottom box and have an email sent saying that they are registered to vote. Be aware that in Wisconsin, we do not automatically get notifications that we are registered. We do not get voter registration cards like people get in other states. So if they want that physical verification, this is necessary. Once the registration is complete, I ask the person if they would like me to look up their polling place. If they do, I go back to this original MyVote page. I click on the Where Do I Vote icon there in the middle, or the tab at the top. I type in their address, and it will show them where they vote on election day. If they don't have any interest, I just tell them, hey, congratulations, and I hope you enjoy your voting experience. If you have any questions about using MyVote to register voters, please feel free to reach out to us at MilwaukeeVoterProject@gmail.com, and we will respond with answers to your questions as soon as possible. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, there are other items that can be used as proof of residence when registering to vote. The photo above gives you a pretty good sampling of what you can use when registering to vote. Items above do not have photos included with them except for the items in the upper left-hand corner. So if you use this to prove your residency, you will need to find an item that has a photo ID to take with you when voting. You can refer back to my photo at the beginning of this video to check on what items are acceptable as photo IDs. If you have any questions, I highly recommend going to the Wisconsin Election Commission website or emailing us at MilwaukeeVoterProject@gmail.com.